This one's a tricky one, viewers. Not a lot of information for Dark Lord from Data East seems to exist online. This is a role-playing game. As we said, Data East worked on it, and Data East did some pretty good stuff, some pretty okay stuff, and some pretty crap stuff. This is actually probably one of the better ones that they've done. It was published and developed by Data East and was released in Japan in 1991. And that might be why there's not much I could find online to talk about this game, because it never made it to America. But that's not going to stop us, is it? No sirree, Bob. So let's talk about the game here for a minute. Dark Lord, role-playing game, really good music, really good graphics, pretty bland little story. Can't tell you too much more about it. Hadn't played much about it. It's got an interesting combat system. But, you know, Dark Lord kind of runs under the radar. Mostly, again, because it was never released in America. Aeon Genesis just finished translating it not too long ago, just a couple of years ago, if I remember right. Odds of anybody playing it's probably pretty slim. So hey, I'm an old man. I like me some NES games, and I like me some NES RPGs. So this one's gonna go on my list of games to actually figure out. The game plot isn't the most original thing, but it was 1991, and well, you know, you get a pretty damn good intro. Breaking it down, we've got Dark God and Light God. They were fighting. Light God used his soul to lock the Dark God and his minions in the earth. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, Dark Lord, from what I've gathered here, seems more about the world that your characters reside in than about the big bad guy at the end of the game. Silent hero attempting to make the world a better place. They seem pretty content on saving babies and getting cats out of trees and that kind of thing. When the main plot does finally encroach upon you, it's done surprisingly well, considering how basic it is. Aesthetically, the game is about what you'd expect. Graphics are decent for 91, and the little cutscenes used to describe the story elements are very well done. When you take a step back and look at it, Dark Lord is a happy medium between the American PC-based RPGs and the Japanese console-based RPGs of that era. So says what I'm reading here. There's no real-world map, and there's only one town. Exploration is at a minimum. You only actually control your characters in the games, in dungeons, and interacting with the kingdom is done through a relatively simple menu system. Dungeons are pretty interesting, since the mission seems so small in comparison to the threat looming over the world. It all complements the compact game world very well, all while keeping it from feeling too claustrophobic. Gameplay is more focused on solving puzzles to finish missions than killing monsters. Killing monsters nets barely any experience compared to what you get for completing a quest, so kind of MMO-ish there, I suppose. Battles happen in more of a strategy game vein, but create another interesting hybrid between East and West. You control each character in your party's movement, but you can only attack in a turn-based manner. This takes a little bit of getting used to, but it definitely keeps the few battles in the game from being boring. The strategy needed is very low and increases only when you get a few magic spells in the game, but it is definitely a welcome addition. The quests are also different enough to keep the game fresh. All of this adds up to make one of the better combinations of early PC and Japanese console RPGs. This game is what it would look like if the AD&D Gold Box series had a bastard child with Final Fantasy. So says this page. Dark Lord seems to be a game that knows its weaknesses and attempts to hide them, then accentuating its positives. The problem is that there's some glaring problems with various parts of the game. The experience system, for example. Instead of keeping a running tally of your experience, it resets to 0 for every level gain. That makes any extra experience, which for some quests can be a ton, completely wasted if you are leveling up. This makes you have to time it well so you can waste a minimum of experience, which leads to a lot of tedious grinding. Beyond that, any level gain is statistically random, as is whether magic spells you learn during a given level. It takes a lot of strategy out of the game and leads to some incredibly frustrating moments, especially in the very beginning. This all gets compounded by a ridiculously overcomplicated interface that leads to way too much button pressing than is actually needed. Although the problems detract from the game pretty bad, Dark Lord is still one that's worth giving a chance if you can get through the mind-blowing difficulty in the beginning and look past its quirks. Underneath it, it's a decent game you probably haven't played, so may as well give it a chance. And that's about all I can say about it. I'm going to spend some more time with Dark Lord here eventually and see what we can do.